In this video, I want to talk a little bit about an experience that happened this last year with this bike. This is a 2009 ZX-10R. I've owned it for about a year now. I love it to death. It's a cool bike. It's fast. I've done a lot to it, and the more I ride it, the more I enjoy it. You know, that's probably typical of a lot of super bike owners. But what happened was, a while back, I was riding it, every day. I was riding with my buddies, and we're just having a ton of fun. But I noticed that a few times when I come to a stop, I held the clutch in, and I'd hear like a squealing noise, and the bike would shudder a little bit when I would release the clutch in first gear to start moving. And after the bike was moving, it would feel fine. But it was only when I was stopping and starting to roll, and the bike would shudder a little bit. And I remember prior to this happening, just when I was reading about my bike online, that one of the issues that was kind of common was that on the back of the clutch basket there's these rivets, and on this year of bike, sometimes these rivets would come loose, and if they come loose inside the motor, it's pretty bad. So in my mind, I thought it's not that big a deal to pull the clutch basket. It's worth checking to see if this is the problem. I can eliminate that if it's not the issue. A process of elimination. So that's what I did. I parked the bike. I pulled the clutch cover. I pulled the clutch cover off, pulled the basket out, and I checked the rivets, and they were completely fine. They weren't loose or anything. In fact, the whole clutch basket looked good. Since I had the clutch basket out, I looked at the clutch plates and everything, and it all looked good. So I knew that was not the issue. I wasn't even super concerned about this issue. It was kind of a thing that was coming and going. So, I just figured, I like working on the bike. I like figuring it out and understanding things better. And so it wasn't a problem for me to take the clutch basket out and inspect it and all that. So here's where the problem started. I put the clutch basket back in with a buddy, and here is the catastrophic mistake. There is a gear on the back of the clutch basket that lines up with the oil pump gear inside the motor. When I put that clutch basket on, you can't see, because of the size of the clutch basket, that gear on the back is smaller than the size of the clutch basket. So when you put it on, if you don't know what you're doing, which I didn't, you can easily misalign that oil pump gear with the clutch basket gear, and they're supposed to mesh. So when that clutch basket spins, it spins that oil pump gear, vice versa. So what happened was I did not align that clutch or the oil pump gear with that clutch basket gear, and when I put that clutch basket on, I torqued it down, and it broke the oil pump. And the second big mistake was I did not know it was broken. Looking back, I remember when I torqued down the clutch basket, I remember it had this weird, it's kind of sunk in about a half inch. I remember thinking that was weird. But I didn't hear anything break. I didn't hear anything pop. So I just sent it. So anyways, I put it back together with a broken oil pump gear, which I didn't know was broken. Started the bike, idled it. Everything was fine. We actually rode it around my neighborhood, just putting around, just to make sure everything was good after taking this clutch basket out. Because at the time, it's just a routine thing. And everything was good. Rode for about 10 minutes. Didn't hear anything. It sounded fine. Parked the bike for a few minutes, put on my full gear, and I wanted to take it out for a rip on the street. And I actually have a video of that I'll show. took it out, got to the end of the neighborhood, went out into the street, and started to wind the bike out. And I noticed after about a quarter mile that a red light was flashing, which caught me off guard. And I looked at the temps, and the temps were already at like 240. And the bike was overheating, and then it said hot, hot, hot. So on this bike, when it gets over 240, it just flashes hot. So you're like seriously overheating the bike. As soon as I saw that, I shut it down. I coasted down a hill, completely scared. I didn't know what was going on. I parked the bike, and it was, basically that oil pump gear had grenaded inside the motor, and I had no idea at the time how bad the damage actually was. So again, I didn't know what was happening. I'm on the side of the road. A dude on a Victory motorcycle rides by. Like a lot of motorcyclists, he stopped to see if I needed help, and he was cool. I'd never met him before. He asked me if I needed help, and I said I didn't know what was wrong with the bike. And basically, long story short, the way I got the bike back to the house, since I was only about a half mile from home, is I'd watch the temps. I would start it up, ride it a little bit until the temps got hot, shut it down. And I kept doing that all the way back home. And as I was getting closer to my house, I noticed the engine was really starting to have trouble. But I'm pretty impressed with the motor. It got me home, despite all the carnage inside the motor that I didn't really know about at the time. So, get home. I forget the process of event or the series of events that happened, but I remember I pulled off. I figured the issue was probably with that clutch basket somehow. And I remember pulling off the clutch cover, pulling the basket out, and I remember seeing some damage inside, but I still didn't put, because I couldn't see the oil pump gear. I couldn't see that it was broken. And then I take that back. I didn't take the clutch basket off, but I could see inside, around the clutch basket, where the damage was, I could see some scraping. It looked like scraping, but since I didn't have the clutch basket off, I couldn't pull it off to look at that broken oil pump gear, so I didn't know it was broken. The problem was I went to take the clutch basket off, and I couldn't get it off because that nut had torqued down so hard. And so me and my buddy tried for hours to get that nut off, to get the clutch basket off, and it was just over-torqued. So there's a series of mistakes that were made on my part. It was a big learning point. I'll never do that again, but I learned the hard way. And at the time, I really had no idea how bad this was going to get. So here's where the story gets interesting. I'm kind of freaking out. I had been randomly talking to a dude on the ZX-10R forums who had the same year of bike as me. He had a Gen 3 ZX-10R. I didn't know where he lived. He was just a dude that hit me up a while back, and we kind of casually just went back and forth. But I had this dude's number. I never called him or texted him or anything, but I was starting to freak out because I couldn't get this clutch basket off. I knew there was some damage in there. I didn't know how bad it was. I couldn't get this thing off. So I just randomly pulled up this dude's number and texted him. And then he asked me what's wrong with the bike. I tell him, and he's cool. I don't want to say his name right now, but he ends up being one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. I forget exactly what happened, but we went back and forth, and he's like, well, where are you at? I was like, I'm in Tennessee. He's like, really? He's like, what part of Tennessee? I was like, I'm in Clarksville by Fort Campbell. He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, I'm in Clarksville too. I was like, what? So we're in the same town on this forum that's nationwide, really worldwide, and he's in the same town as me. And he's got the same year of bike, and it gets even better. But long story short, he's like, you know what? Put that thing in the truck. I need you to take it over to my house. This is the type of dude this guy is, right? And so I forget how soon it happened, but I think within a day or two, I loaded the bike up at his house, and he gave me his address, and I went over there, dropped it off. And we worked on it for a while. We couldn't get the clutch basket off. That nut had been torqued down so bad. We ended up, long story short, we had to cut the nut off. And the whole time, I have all this anticipation because, once you get the clutch basket off, we can finally see what the damage was. So it took us like 2 days. We ended up just cutting the stinking thing off. We had to be really careful not to cut into the threads of the shaft that the clutch basket was mounted on, but we cut it off. Finally got the clutch basket off, and then that's when I was hoping for the best at this point. I thought maybe I had over torqued it. Maybe a rivet on the back was scraping or something. No, it was bad. So when we pulled the clutch basket off, we could immediately see that oil pump gear. It was broken, um, and there was just, it looked like a grenade had gone off inside the motor. Um, and still at this point, we didn't know how bad it had gotten because we hadn't split the case apart. And that's what my buddy told me. He's like, "Listen, man, I know this sucks, but we're gonna have to pull the motor because we don't know. I mean, you know, we don't know if the transmission's torn up. We don't know if it got into the cylinders, the debris, the pistons, whatever." So we had like a handshake, and I was like, "Man, dude," he's like, he told me right off the bat, he's like, "I'm not gonna charge you nothing, man. Like, just you know, we're both military, former military, and he wanted to help me out, dude. He's just that type of dude." And we just had a couple beers, and we pulled that motor out of the bike over like a week or two. Like I was working too at the same time. I mean, we had to work around each other's schedules, but long story short, we got the motor out of the bike. We split the cases, and then we opened it up, and it was pretty bad. Like, the transmission was fine, thank God. The head was fine, but everything in between was torn up. The oil pump gear had broken off and got up into the cylinders. It had torn up some pistons. It had torn up the crankshaft pretty bad, and it was bad. And so this is where the story even gets more interesting. Is it turns out this dude that's helping me, he has the same generation of bike as me, but he has a built motor. Okay, he's got a brand new motor in the bike. It's bored. It's making like over 200 horsepower. He's done a lot to it. He's like a really performance oriented guy. He just happens to have a good case for my year bike, a set of pistons and rods for my bike, and they're just sitting in the garage. And he kind of wanted to keep them because he didn't know if he was going to hang on to them for something down the road. But I just can't believe the way it worked out. I was like, dude, he didn't want to sell them to me. He wanted to just give them to me. Like I said, I don't know what the deal was, man. He's just super generous. And I'm from California, living out here in the Midwest. There's a lot of dudes that are just genuinely like good dudes that want to help you out. And this is definitely an example of that. I tried to pay him for the parts. He wouldn't take it. Nothing. He's like, nope. This is working out perfect. He's like, I got parts for you. We're gonna rebuild this motor. And that's what happened. So over the next like 3 months, working around each other's schedules, we broke we pulled my motor out, we broke it down, split the cases. I had to get my crankshaft. I sent it up to a performance shop. I was able to reuse my crankshaft. It looked pretty chewed up, but they were able to rebalance it. And for like $40, it was a good deal. And so I was able to reuse the crankshaft, even though it got chewed up a little bit. It was balanced perfectly, so we reused that. We put the new pistons and rods in. We plastic gauged them. We did everything by the book. We had the manual. We did torque spec, everything. Like, he's a really detail oriented dude, and we did it right by the book, by the way the manual says, torque spec, everything. So we put the new rods, pistons on this crankshaft that we reused. We put them in the new case. We moved the transmission over, put the head back on, and since the motor was apart, I went with a little bit thinner head gasket for higher compression. I think stock is like 0.56 millimeter, and I went with a Dr. Doug head gasket, which is 0.25 millimeters. So I think it bumped the compression about a point. I need to get it dyno tuned. The bike still runs good, but I definitely noticed a difference with this head gasket. But anyways, yeah, so we put the motor back together over like 3 months, and we became pretty good friends. We drank a lot of beer in his garage, and I just left the bike over there. And we put this motor back together. Like, we came down to, I was about to leave on a training event for like a month, and it came down to, like, we were almost at the finish line. So we spent these last 4 days before I left for this training event, just like working overtime, putting this thing back together, because I didn't want to have to sit at his house for another month, because I felt bad about it. It was just taking up a room in his garage, and he didn't seem to care, but it was bugging me, you know. But anyways, put this motor back together, put it back on the bike, and I'll never forget what it was like when we turned that thing over, started it up, hooked the battery up, cranked it, and it just started right up. And it sounded so beautiful to me, because for 3 months, you know, I was in some low points. I was like, man, am I ever going to get this bike back? Like, I didn't know. It was in pieces for so long, and I didn't know how to, but this guy was a professional. He knew how to put it back together, and he did it right. and I learned so much. I'm so grateful for the experience. I'm so grateful that this dude is my buddy now, and we're riding buddies now. Like I've went and rode with him a couple times, and unfortunately right now the weather's getting kind of cold, so. Um, but yeah, we're buddies, man. He hits me up. My bike's back together. We put it back together. He did most of it. I tried to get in there and help as much as I could, but I felt like sometimes I was getting in the way because he knew a lot more about this stuff than I did. Um, but yeah, so now we're buddies, man, and this experience was awesome. We learned, we became friends, and we drank a lot of beer. We put this thing back together, and I'll never forget the day that motor was running. I was putting the fairings back on the bike, and we took it for a test ride, and felt stronger and healthier than ever. And ever since he put this motor back together, I've been riding. Let's see, it's November. We finished in August, so I've been riding ever since then. And the motor is stronger and healthier than it's ever been. Aside from little maintenance things I got to stay on top of, like right now I need a new stator. That's unrelated to the issue. But the motor itself it's stout, it's powerful, it's faster than it's ever been, especially with this thinner head gasket. And this dude just built it right. But I just think the whole story is just phenomenal. That this guy ended up living. First off, he lived so close to me. Second, a veteran, good solid dude. He's had a pretty amazing career that I don't want to get into right now, but he's a good dude. And then three, the fact that this guy's got all the parts, most of the parts that I need to rebuild this motor. Now I went out. I had to buy my own piston rings. Still, it's $200. I had to go out and buy all the O-rings and seals that we needed for the rebuild, or most of them. There's several other little things I had to buy. I have a full list somewhere. But really, it ended up the rebuild total without even paying him. Like it was still less than maybe $1,500. And I tried to pay him, several $100 for the case and pistons. He wouldn't take it, and he still won't take it. But I'm just going to try to repay him by being a good friend and a riding buddy, and someone that's there for him if he needs me. Because I'm pretty humbled and honored that he went out of his way on his own free time, and he spent so many hours working on this bike for me. And in his mind, he says he just wants to help out another biker, which is pretty humbling. And I'm glad that we're buddies, and I can't wait for us to go ride again. But yeah, I just want to share that experience. It was pretty humbling. He's a good dude, and it's pretty amazing how other riders, veterans, whatever, will look out for each other with stuff like this. And you know what? It makes me want to, if a situation comes up where I have to help someone that I don't know, it's going to make me really want to help them because I need to pay it forward, because this was an amazing experience to go through. So anyways, that was kind of a high-level overview of how this went down, but I just want to share it with you guys. Hope you guys can appreciate the story, because my bike is back. It's running stronger than ever, and it's fast. It's really fast. All right, guys, take care.